Thank you for joining us here on Rwanda Television on this 15th day of July. These are the latest headlines for our viewers in Rwanda and around the world. President Paul Kagame this Thursday virtually joined other African leaders and the World Bank for a high-level meeting to generate support for the 20th replenishment of the International Development Association. The Ministry of Health says the 10-day lockdown has been put in place to prevent the death toll from the COVID-19 virus and infections from continuing to rise, as measures taken earlier did not change the figures as expected. Happy Thursday, good evening and a very warm welcome to tonight's broadcast. My name is Gloria Mutisi. Starting us off tonight, President Paul Kagame this Thursday virtually joined other African leaders and the World Bank for a high-level meeting hosted by President Alassane Ouattara, the President of the Republic of Cote d'Ivoire, to generate support for the 20th replenishment of the International Development Association.
Alongside health systems, we also need to increase investment in infrastructure, climate mitigation, industrial development, and human capital. That is exactly what we need right now, and it is why the World Bank decided to launch the 20th replenishment cycle early. In Africa, we must also do our part by building accountable and efficient service delivery institutions. We must also mobilize more domestic tax revenue and invest a greater share of our own resources in the health and education budget.
During this meeting, President Paul Kagame also noted that it would be impossible to achieve this without greater attention to peace and security.
In all of Africa's sub-regions, we see examples of gains being eroded because of conflict and fragility. This diverts resources from other development priorities and even affects regional neighbors. There is a real need for us to work together closely to find sustainable financing mechanism for peace and security institutions in Africa alongside IDA 20 and reinforcing it. If implemented, the bold vision articulated in this declaration will enable Africa to recover from the pandemic and return to a solid growth trajectory.
Earlier today at Urugwiro village, President Paul Kagame received Ambassador Abdallah bin Mohammed Al Sayed, who is ending his 2-year term as the first ambassador of the state of Qatar to Rwanda. Ambassador Abdallah bin Mohammed was also accompanied by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Dr. Vincent Biruta. New French ambassador to Rwanda, Antoine Amfray, arrived in Rwanda. This Thursday, Ambassador-designate Antoine handed over copies of the documents authorizing him to represent his country in Rwanda to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Rwanda. Dr. Vincent Biruta and the French envoy discussed the key points of cooperation between the two countries. During his visit to Rwanda in May this year, French President Emmanuel Macron appointed Antoine Amfray to represent his country as ambassador to Rwanda. Following the appointment of Antoine Amfray, the government of Rwanda approved him in June at a cabinet meeting held on June 12, 2021, with residents in Rwanda. To other matters now, a total of 211,000 households have been counted for food assistance as the city of Kigali and 8 other districts go into lockdown due to a surge in COVID-19 infections. Citizens are called upon to adhere to all the health measures that have been put in place. One is one of the measures that was taken as the country sees an increase in infections. It's, however, a hardship to some people, especially the low-income earners. For that reason, the government of Rwanda says it has identified 211,000 households across the country that will be aided through this time, together with the COVID-19 patients that are under the home-based quarantine. as explained by the Minister for Local Government.
muri iyo miryango bazatanga bakurikije.
We will assist these families based on the number of persons per family. Look at the nutrition side and other things people might need on a daily basis, and this will be done by local authorities. And even for those districts that aren't under lockdown, home-based care patients are being followed up on. It's our responsibility to take care of these people as Rwandans in general. The government acknowledges that there had been mistakes in the distribution of food in the past lockdowns, especially caused by the inappropriate behaviors of some local authorities. The Minister of Local Government now says that such irregularities will not be tolerated again. We urge the authorities to refrain from harassing the people, but rather to explain to the citizens and teach them. Harassment is not allowed. We will not tolerate leaders that bully and treat citizens badly. Those that have done it will be punished too and serve as examples to others. The Minister of Trade and Industry says that while most business activities are closed now, the ones allowed to operate also have to follow certain regulations. Food vendors, those in the banking sector, mobile money services and petroleum products will continue operating at a 30% capacity and stop operations by 5 p.m. And for the factories, only those permitted to operate will remain open, such as the agro-processing industries, as we have made provisions for such. The Rwanda National Police spokesperson, CP John Bosco Kabira, says the police will continue apprehending those that go beyond COVID-19 prevention guidelines. We promise Rwandans that regardless of where you are, whether you're under lockdown or the districts that aren't under lockdown, whoever goes beyond the prevention guidelines shall be arrested and be held accountable. Some of the food items expected to be distributed to vulnerable people include beans, maize flour, rice, among other basic supplies, while families with children will be provided with milk. The Ministry of Health says the 10-day lockdown has been put in place to prevent the death toll from the COVID-19 virus and infections from continuing to rise, as measures taken earlier did not change the figures as expected. In the next 10 days, the government of Rwanda will carry out mass testing across the country to assess the actual status of the pandemic and the severity of the reported Delta variant. Ethan Tashovia.
During a post-cabinet press conference on the new strategies to deal with the third wave of COVID-19 pandemic in Rwanda, the Minister of Health, Dr. Daniel Ngamije, said the previous measures did not bring the country to the point where it wanted in regards to the curbing of the spread of the virus, which is why the new measures included lockdown of Kigali and other 8 districts that have registered the highest number of new infections in the recent days. What the lockdown does is that it reduces the movement of people. The infected people will spend 10 days at home, where you may find that even members of their families are also infected unknowingly. During those days, they will all stay at home, and in the process, some will heal, but the most important of this is that they will not spread the virus. That's how new infections will be controlled, and life will return to normal thereafter. Some people have been downplaying this disease since its outbreak, claiming it's for the elderly and those with underlying health conditions, until we started seeing young people die who have not been diagnosed with other chronic conditions, which means that this disease is very serious. The fact that COVID-19 is a serious pandemic is also evidenced by people who believe that there is a real need for concrete measures to combat it and that people should stop downplaying the virus. No one should disregard the measures in place to control the spread of the virus. I get very upset when people get on the bus and immediately remove their masks, yet that's where people get easily infected. In the garages and car washing bays, you tell someone to wear their masks properly and they will insult you. COVID-19 is very unforgiving these days, highly infectious and very deadly, which is why we need to put in place more effective measures than we used to. Health Minister Dr. Daniel Ngamije said the national laboratory has now the capacity to test a new variant of the coronavirus called Delta. The Minister of State for Public Health, Dr. Munga Tarsis, stressed that in the next 10 days, the health authorities will carry out mass testing across the country to assess the actual status of the pandemic and the severity of the reported Delta variant. It requires us to examine the variant's DNA, and that makes us aware of what has changed in its genome. This is often found in the people who are newly infected by the virus, in its early stages of contraction, when the carrier has many viruses in their body. It requires that we test those people early, and it's during mass testing that we will see new cases. Among those will include those who did not know that they were infected. In so doing, we'll do a comprehensive research that will show us the status of the virus in the country. The COVID-19 mass testing exercise will also go hand in hand with improving the healthcare of patients, according to Health Minister Dr. Daniel Ngamije. The other thing that will be done in that mass testing is that patients with severe symptoms will be given antiretroviral drugs and be able to monitor them closely. The whole point is to make sure that patients receive the best possible attention, but also avoid having large numbers of patients, which could overwhelm our capacity, which doesn't help us. Having fewer and manageable cases is our number one strategy to fight this pandemic. The number of new COVID-19 infections in Rwanda rose from about 13 early June to about 900 cases a day in July. In addition to this, the number of patients in critical condition and the death toll from COVID-19 are also on the rise. Reporting for RwandaTV News, Ethan Tashabia.
Residents of Kigali City and in other districts which will be under total lockdown effective July 17th say they are ready to comply with the COVID-19 preventive measures as local authorities continue to monitor their compliance and reassuring those who will need food throughout this time of its supply. Jane Mutoni now reports.
Residents in Kamonyi and Gicumbi district are preparing for the implementation of the new resolutions, including the total lockdown. They say they are pleased with the resolutions which were taken during the cabinet meeting and that they are ready to abide by the measures to contain the spread of the COVID-19 virus. It's good because this way COVID-19 cases could reduce. I was staying at Rienzi, and with the total lockdown, I may have to return back home, and the issue now is how I will get home. I'm pleased with the decision of total lockdown, and we will abide by the measures and stay home while avoiding unnecessary movements so that we mitigate the spread of this virus. Local authorities say residents will not be starving at home as some have received good harvest, while those who leave off on their daily part-time work will be provided with food supplies. Just like we did in the last lockdown, we are ready to help them. The first thing to do is to remind our people that in our culture, when one has enough food or harvest, he or she reaches out to help another that doesn't. What's more, people have learned a lesson from the previous lockdown of saving or reserving for the next few days. We also have partnerships, productive industries and cooperatives. In general, people in this district received a good harvest, which means none of them will lack food during the total lockdown. But again, we shall be monitoring and making sure that people are not meeting to feast in their homes. In the last 3 days, 166 COVID-19 cases have been reported in Kamonyi district, an average of 55 per day, while Gicumbi district has 65 cases at an average of 21 per day. Jane Mutoni, RwandaTV News.
Many thanks, Jane, for that story. Effective Friday, July 16th, each vendor in Muhanga district will be allowed to work every day. Those working in the same shop space are not allowed to exceed 50% of their number so as to prevent the spread of the coronavirus.
Residents in Muhanga district agree that the COVID-19 cases are escalating as they believe that this is enough reason which may lead to a total lockdown for the whole country, just like the 8 districts and the Kigali city, which shall be put under total lockdown starting from 17th July. The COVID-19 pandemic is taking a toll on us, as people are also not taking the preventive measures seriously. We need to encourage each other to respect the preventive guidelines so that we won't be put under total lockdown as well. 2 weeks ago, Muhanga district issued special regulations in which the churches in Nyamabuye and Shogwe sectors were closed and only 50% of the shops were operating, as some markets were only allowed to sell food supplies. The local private sector association explains that these additional regulations have been productive, which is why it has been decided that from this Friday, all shops will be reopened, as vendors shall also be extra careful as they adhere to the measures. We decided to make a change in the resolutions and allowed all shops to reopen, but vendors that share the same shop space shall not be exceeding 50% of their number. For example, if 6 vendors work in the same shop, only 3 will be working, and if there are 4, then 2 are allowed to work. Since June, a high number of infections have been continuously reported in Muhanga district, as sometimes they would amount to 100 per day, but the numbers are slowly declining. Vendors insist that they are capable and willing to abide by the preventive measures. At first, we were not happy with the resolutions because some of us had been stopped from working, but now that we have seen the results, we shall also keep on abiding by the measures. The Minister of Local Government, Gatabazi JMV, says although Muhanga district was not included among the districts which will be put under total lockdown, they should be extra conscious and adhere to the measures due to the rising numbers of cases in the district. Special measures are to be taken in other districts, like we mentioned. Abiding by them is one way to avoid a total lockdown, which is why we urge their leaders not to take on more measures, but the people also need to understand that these measures are for their own good. Apart from shops being allowed to reopen and not exceeding 50% of vendors working in the same shop, churches that are also allowed to operate will resume their activities, but with safety precautions. These resolutions will be re-examined in the next 2 weeks.
In other news items that we prepared for you today, political analysts believe that the government's decision to create the Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement is a decision that will further promote unity and reconciliation, as well as constitute policies that will help Rwandans participate in decision-making. Let's now hear from Ungari Jade.
Various communities believe that they have already seen the results of Rwanda's policy of promoting unity and reconciliation, as it has enabled citizens to live in peace in a country that once had ethnic divisions. One must educate them like they're teaching students in a classroom setting. The reason we're doing well is because we live in peace. We share, we live together. It is all very good. The unity of Rwandans was reaffirmed by the cabinet meeting on Wednesday, July 14th, which approved the establishment of a new Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement. Among the priorities for the ministry is the promotion of unity of Rwandans, which currently stands at 94.7%. A researcher finds that the progress made in the cause of the unity of Rwandans must be consolidated and guarded from the negative forces, including Rwandans and foreigners at home and abroad. Constituting that ministry shows the dedication of the government of Rwanda towards promotion of unity and reconciliation. Rebuilding the unity of Rwandans requires a lot of effort and time. That's why it requires creating a dedicated ministry to safeguard the gains made in this regard since 1994, because there are negative forces with the intention of destroying what Rwandans have achieved in unity and reconciliation, which is why the government needs to set up strong measures to curb that. Unity and reconciliation is a continuous journey that requires renewed strategies to strengthen the unity fabric of the society. The ministry will also promote civic responsibilities. The executive secretary of the Civil Society Forum says this will make the community more involved in governance.
This ministry is going to harmonize the policies, programs that are going to lead to to more participation of citizens. But also we believe that as part of as a part of a democratic society, citizens and stakeholders take part. For instance, civil society take part in shaping the lives of a developed society. So we believe that establishing a ministry in charge of national unity and civic engagement is a remedy to a number of issues in terms of, you know, the service delivery, but also the development projects that address community issues should be coming addressing the real issues that the citizens are facing.
A statement from the cabinet meeting on Wednesday, July 14th, stated that the new ministry is responsible for promoting the unity of Rwandans, preserving the heritage of the country, and teaching civic education. The Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement was approved just 3 days to mark the 27th anniversary of the formation of the Rwandan Unity Government in 1994. In addition, there has been a Commission on Unity and Reconciliation since 1999. Mngari Jade, RTV News.
To judicial matters now, the Special High Court of the International Criminal Court has resumed the terrorism trial of Paul Rusesabagina and 20 of his co-accused related to the crimes committed by the MRCD FLN. This Thursday, defendants commented on the penalties and damages filed against them. Ethan Toshabia.
The day's hearing of terror suspect linked to MRCD FLN coalition was marked by a statement from the defendants and counsel on the prosecution's findings, including the sentences sought by prosecution against them based on their defense. The hearing also focused on the compensation for which defendants are required to pay for their alleged actions. Mark Nizeimana was supposed to take into the dock ahead of his co-accused, but his legal counsel did not appear in court, and his hearing was adjourned to another date, paving way for another terror suspect, Shaban Emmanuel, to take the lead. The prosecution urged that his confession was incomplete, which Shaban refuted and told the court that he did not plead guilty to the crime of inciting people to join the terrorist group, but admitted the crime of having encouraged his brother, Simeon Nikuzwe, to join MLCD FLN terror activities. He asserted that his confessions should inform the court to pardon him and instead send him to Mutowa Demobilization and Reintegration Camp for civic training. Matakamba Jean Barikmes also pleaded guilty to the prosecution's claim and damages and demanded that the court releases him due to his illness caused by a car accident. He requested the court that 25 years of imprisonment be suspended due to his health condition. Yamuremia Emmanuel, whom the prosecution seeks that he should be sentenced to 20 years in prison, pleaded guilty, and according to his information, he claims that he assisted the judiciary and investigators and apologized before the court, hence requesting the court to reduce his sentence. As for the damages, he says he was nowhere near the looting and destruction of public property by his peers and instead asked the court to hold to account whoever is responsible. Nikuzwe Simeon, on the other hand, parted company with his lawyer after the pair failed to agree on what the defendants should admit and not admit before the court. He maintained his stance that he was not part of the terrorist group. The trial of MLCD FLN terror suspects is set to continue on July 16, 2021 at 8:30 a.m. Reporting for RTV News, Ethan Tashobia.
That's all we had for you tonight. Thank you for the privilege of your company tonight. Enjoy the rest of the programming. Of course, not forgetting to remind you that it's our responsibility to stop the spread of the pandemic. I'll do my part, and I hope you do yours as well. Otherwise, God bless you and keep you. And until next time, I'm Gloria Mutisi. Bye for now.